James Callis is in Star Trek? Be still, my Galactica heart, be still. Hello interwebs, I hope you're doing well because I am here to review Star Trek Picard Season 2, Episode 7, Monster. Ooh, doing the Guinan thing. Ooh, monster. Ooh. Anyways, Star Trek Picard. I'm excited to review the episode, and as usual, I'm going to do spoiler-free up front, then spoilers in the back. But before we get to that, I just want to share with all of you, this past weekend, I had the absolute honor and joy to go to Star Trek Mission Chicago. Got this little Michael Burnham, dead-eyed Michael Burnham shirt. It was a fantastic experience. Honestly, one of the most meaningful and moving experiences of my life. And I did a whole video, a way too long video, but one I'm honestly really proud of because it just shared what that trip meant to me in it, and how it rejuvenated me and inspired me in so many different ways. Also get some tidbits about upcoming Star Trek stuff within it and things that I saw there. So please check that out up here. It looks like it's up. It should be up here because I just want to share that experience. It really meant a lot to me, and I just want to share it with all of you and the joy that that whole trip made me feel, and how I honestly just feel really rejuvenated, not only just in energy-wise, but as a human being after that experience. So please check that out, just because I want to share it with everybody because it really meant the world to me. Also, I got these weird dorky pictures of me with Captain Janeway herself and Tawny Newsome and Jack Quaid from Star Trek Lower Decks. So that was fun. We'll talk more about that in another video, but to actually talk about this episode, Monster. First off, though, we gotta talk about James Giaus Balter himself, Kallus, in this episode. I have loved this man since he was in Battlestar Galactica. Always a phenomenal actor, and just great to finally see him in Star Trek. And I won't spoil who he is playing here because he's kind of playing a strangely mysterious character, kind of associated with, kind of building off of last episode, something going on in Picard's mind as we take a trip into Picard's very, very troubled psyche here. And so we sort of meet his character within that. And what I really appreciated most about this episode and the way Kallus' scenes in particular were written was that they had this sort of dreamlike quality to them. Every single scene with him you could follow, but the lines just seemed a little bit off. Like there was something a little bit strange to them. The writing was it's really hard to thread that needle is the metaphor I was looking for. It's kind of hard to thread that needle of making it something followable and yet dreamlike at the same time. And the easy way that people do that is like, ooh, weird shots and weird movements, and they have that within this episode, but the scenes with Kallus and Picard really mainly only focus on their dialogue, and so for the dialogue to really have that dreamlike kind of logic but not quite logical feel to them was phenomenal. And I thought those scenes were easily the best of the entire episode. Everything else going on in the episode mainly felt like piece moving stuff. We have some things with Jurati coming off of that in episode 7 and Raffi investigating her. That sort of like was moving pieces on the board. We also get Rios's furthering relationship with the Doctor character here that I won't again spoil here, but again it more felt like moving from A to B and not necessarily moving the big plot of the season forward. And I know there's been a lot of people complaining out there about the pacing of this show this season, how they really feel like it's a 2-hour movie stretched out to 10 hours. But I actually kind of have been appreciating the pace of this season. I kind of am enjoying the slow burn of it because I really like the moment-to-moment interplay and character moments that we've been getting. Unlike Discovery, which again, love Star Trek Discovery, bought my Sneako Martin Green shirt here. The problem that I had with that is that while its pacing also did have issues, the pacing there just felt so wonky because everything had to be heightened and move and go really fast at every single moment, while also treading water at the same time. So it felt fast and slow at the same time. Where here, while yes, it is stretching out the plot, and I can see how people are upset with the minuscule pacing moment to moment of the forward momentum of the show, I am at least appreciating that we get moments with these characters that like let us sit with them and feel them and get to experience with them. And there's some really good interplay, I think, especially with Raffi and Seven here. I just really love their moment to moment banter that makes me actually feel them as people, as characters that we don't get to see, I think, in Discovery or things like that. And again, love Discovery, but I think that this pacing is working more for me than otherwise. Now, is it an ideal pace? No, but I'm personally liking it. That all being said, the other element of this episode is sort of a second layer to Picard's dream that is this sort of fantasy take on Picard's psyche, which I really liked. The artistry behind it really was wonderful. But I think some of the nebulousness and interpretability of those scenes might do a disservice to some of the ideas of abuse and trauma that this season is trying to get at. Because there's, again, without being too specific, and I'll talk about this more in spoilers, there are some things we learn about Picard's past. in this, but some of it is still open to interpretation, and yet they leave a little dangling piece that there's more to the story than what we see here. But I feel like some of the elements that we get are not concrete enough that the emotional catharsis that we get with going into Picard's mind is left a little bit too nebulous for us to really have felt I think the moment, that gut punch that they were going for here. And so I wish they had taken a little bit more time to give us a few more concrete details before they did the big revelation that they give at the end of the episode, even if they are going to maybe still give us more down the line, because I think it weakened it a little bit here. But on the whole, while this was more of a place-moving episode overall, I really think the stuff with James Callis and Picard really sells this, was absolutely fantastic, and I think overall some of the ideas of abuse and trauma that the show is wrestling with are really interestingly explored, and I really like the overall message of what it's trying to say, and I think it will get to it, what the themes that they're getting for, of not blaming oneself for trauma, I think is the overall message to go with here. So overall, I really like the episode, but to talk about all that, I need to get into spoilers, so let's get into it. Okay, now that we're in spoilers, James Callis is freaking Picard's dad? That's crazy. Oh, that's so cool. I really, really love, again, James Callis, every single moment to moment in this was great. This season really loves its gaslighty therapist characters, because we start off with Picard and James Callis' character kind of in this therapy session. And again, I love the dreamlike quality of this, where you can kind of follow their lines, but things felt off. The therapist wasn't quite paying attention at moments. He seemed to be there to evaluate Picard. The lines didn't quite seem to match up. Where, for example, there was moments where Picard called him out for being a bad therapist, but he says, the human model is not the best version, but, you have so many walls up that even a betazoid can't read it. Again, it's just, lines that felt a little bit strange, but the ultimate idea of what these scenes were trying to get across really came through. Picard being this man who we've known for years in Star Trek, who has put up so many walls around himself that he's made himself Captain Jean-Luc Picard, made himself this man who is this stalwart person of virtue, but we don't really know Jean-Luc the person. And while, yes, we have gotten moments of who Jean-Luc is throughout Next Generation and into the movies, of his love of archaeology and things like that, he is someone who is very closed off. People still, his closest friends, as James Callis says, call him Captain. And so I like that sort of, again, this deconstruction of the character Picard and sort of asking the question of where does that come from, this sort of emotional wall that he puts up around himself. And I like that James Callis, in the role of the therapist, really niggles at that and really pokes at it in just interesting ways that sort of are reflected in the story that Picard tells about his mother, clearly. And I like that the story is sold in this fantasy way. It was very creepy, in the stunning, beautiful imagery of the painted glass that Picard and his mother are working on his fantasy stuff. And I like that, again, Callis points out that Picard has seen things in binarized good and evil. His mother was this perfect saint, and monster, the abuse that she faced by Picard's father clearly paints that man as a clear monster. But there is more black and white to that situation. And so we get Talon, the sort of supervisor character, going into his memories, trying to save the young Picard from these monsters. And the moment when she enters, we hear I am Locutus, a Borg, and all these little audio clips from past Star Trek episodes of all Picard's trauma that have led him to these moments. Were absolutely creepy and evocative. And I like her sort of going through and trying to protect young Picard, because Picard, again, sees his mother as this figure who she would say things like, you're going to do wonderful things. She was this beautiful, supportive mother. I love the moment when she says, just know that whoever you become is someone who I always believe in, when they're running away from supposedly James Callis, Picard's father, at least in this fantasy version form. She just seems like this ideal, perfect mother, especially in Picard's mind, of just this person who loves him endlessly perfectly, and that's probably how she was. But then we get the revelation eventually that she clearly had some sort of mental health issues. Probably schizophrenia, it would seem to be, or something along those lines. And Picard, as a kid, always thought his father was abusing his mother, but actually, apparently, I guess, it was his father trying to help her with his schizophrenia. And I can understand, for a little kid, that would be very confusing and very difficult for him to handle. And this is very clearly meant to evoke similar things that Patrick Stewart himself has gone through. Now, I'm not going to necessarily get into all of that here. Patrick Stewart has talked about it in his own interviews and things like that. So there's clearly a lot of bringing Patrick Stewart's own personal history into the show. It's very clearly just putting the two one-to-one. And I think that all of this experience speaks to that, about how Picard, as the character, as a kid, blames himself for not being able to protect his mother from his dad. But it was obviously a much more complicated question than the good and evil that he always sort of thought it was, and what he brought into his adulthood of like these good and evil ways that he sees the world and sort of inspires people to see them this sort of binarized view, which I don't think Picard in real life did, but these sort of like, I am the stalwart protector that needs to protect others, that comes out of this very real trauma that he's bringing here. And we see that gets continued when Lara says this trauma, this pain you feel is going to inspire others. And it doesn't make it worthwhile. And I really like the point that it's like, it's not that your trauma was needed or should have been or should have happened, but that what happened, and you're able to just go forward from there and use it. And not that it makes you better or worse, but you just becomes part of yourself and becomes part of what you're able to do in the world. And I really like that take on trauma, that it's not judging someone saying your trauma makes you better or your trauma makes you worse. It's just trauma is part of you, and it will become part of who you become. And I really thought that this episode got it. The one thing that I'm a bit confused on, and I wish they had been a little bit more concrete in this, is what level of abuse that Picard's father inflicted upon Picard's mother, because she has schizophrenia. That does not mean she was not necessarily actually abused. And so this seems to be like an absolvement of Picard's father, James Callis' character, in these scenes. Like, oh, you're all good. And that might reflect Patrick Stewart's actual parental experience in his real life. But for us as viewers watching it, I was a bit like, well, did he still abuse her or not? And are we absolving him or not of that? And so I'm trying to distance Picard from Patrick Stewart, and I wish we had gotten a little bit more concreteness on, like, not that I wanted like a scene of him like hitting her or something like that, but a little bit more concreteness on exactly what happened, and a little less impressionistic and a little more literal, just so I had a little bit awareness of like, was he just like doing something that looked like abuse that was actually just trying to care for her as a patient of schizophrenia, or did he do something accidentally that hurt her but didn't intend to, or was he actually abusive because people who suffer mental health problems do face a lot of abuse, like physical abuse from family members, from others, from society. And so I would have liked to see at least a little understanding of what of those it was from Picard's young eyes, in order to wonder whether it was okay to absolve him or not. And so I would have liked that to be a little bit more literal there. So that's my one major kind of issue with that whole presentation. Otherwise, I thought it was a very good exploration of these very hard topics, and ones that are very clearly personal for Patrick Stewart. And James Callis, again, just killing it, just absolutely killing it, and bringing that weight to all these scenes that were really, really wonderful. And we do get little hints that there's more going on here, because it looks like it looks like a young Picard tried to rescue his mother or something, taking a little key. So we'll see how that eventually shakes out. But then we get a scene where Talon reveals that she's actually Romulan to Picard after they escape Picard's memories. I thought that was a really sweet scene, again, giving us little more hints into what possibly this person's relationship to Laris is. We sort of get like, oh, maybe she's an ancestor. I'm still on the train that it is actually Laris. Like, this is Laris. She's just been assigned to Picard later on, but we'll see if that actually turns out to be the case. But it also involves the mythology of the supervisors from that season. Like, they get to assigned from species to watch over different species, even ones that are close to them. So I like that sort of that idea and evolution of that lore. I thought that was very cool. But within all of this, we also get another story with Rios finally coming clean with the Doctor. And I love the Doctor character, like being like calling out Rios and being like freaked out and like, what the hell is going on? That all of it felt true, and the interaction between these two characters were great. And I love how she was honestly scared of Rios when he was coming at her. It's like, why are you coming at me like a serial killer? Her fear and the writing of these scenes felt very real, and the freaked outness she feels, and like the comfort that Rios is trying to get across to her. Like, look, trust me, trust us. I thought all of that was very cool. I'm getting very much shades of Star Trek 4 Voyage Home. We already got an overt reference to it a few episodes ago with the guy on the bus, but clearly this is a very similar storyline to the, I forget her name, the whale researcher from Star Trek 4 that Kirk brought to the future. However, I think the twist on this is going to be, we got hints last episode that Rios likes the 21st century, so my guess is that Rios is actually going to stay in the 21st century with this Doctor. But again, we're getting huge butterflies here because Rios takes her onto his ship. Again, a thing Captain Kirk did, so if anyone's like, he's being dumb, yes he is, but he's being Captain Kirk dumb, which is the best kind of dumb. Also, the little kid, cutest thing ever, is like, he's from the space. It's like, I thought we made a deal, kid. Shut up. No allowance. And then also we get Seven and Raffi investigating jurati. Again, the interplay between these two characters I thought was wonderful. I mentioned this spoiler-free section, but I loved their back and forth of like Raffi being like, she's kissing Rios. Like I thought that thing was over. They're the side attraction. We're the main attraction. Our pain is beautiful, and and I just like their banter. And you get why Seven and Raffi work as a couple in these scenes. I thought it was great. I also loved when Seven says when we crashed, and then Raffi said landed, and just without missing a beat, and there's no tension drawn to that joke. Wonderful like interplay. Absolutely loved it. But I love Seven like being very focused on like no. Borg is going on here. We need to deal with that. While Raffi's being a little bit more playful, but Seven is just zeroed in on like we need to mess with this because clearly she would be scared of the Borg coming back and the Borg Queen being back. Them going off to investigate jurati. I think the scene with jurati sort of freaking everyone out of the bar with the very CGI, like the window that she breaks was clearly CGI. Like not one of the best CGI moments. I will be honest, but. Outside of that whole scene at the bar was very, very cool and fun, but a little bit needless generally. But I like they're going to investigate in the very fear of like, oh, she's trying to work up her endorphins to try to speed along the process of making not a new drone, which I think would take a lot less time, but make a new queen. Jurati is becoming a new queen, which still lends credence to the theory that Jurati is the queen that we saw way back in episode 1 of this season. So still hanging out hope for that. But that was a really cool sequence, and I'm very, very excited to see where that's going to go. Again, moving us from A to B, now the characters know they need to stop Jurati. But then we get another scene where Picard kind of learns that, okay, this trial that they're on is not necessarily about learning about himself, about Picard, which is what most of the trials have been focused on that Q has given Picard in Next Generation and things. But what this trial actually is about Picard learning more about Q, what Q is dealing with, which I love that subversion. We never really got to know much about Q. But then we got the thing that I think most of us were excited for when we learned that this season would have both John Delancey and Guinan in it, is that we finally start to get a little bit more of the lore between Elorians and Q, because way back in Q Who, we got little hints that Q and Guinan knew each other, with Guinan doing the little hand thing, which Guinan does in this episode, which I loved. I loved her bringing back the hand thing. They clearly had a history.
And if you'd like, I'd be more than pleased to expedite her departure. You know him?
We have had some dealings.
Those dealings were 2 centuries ago.
And so I'm liking that we're getting a little bit more evolution of what that history between the Elorians and the Q is here, because Picard goes to Guinan to help summon a Q, and we learn that they had actually had a whole battle before, and that they had made a truce way back in the day over food and drink, which I like this evolution of the Elorian lore, because Guinan, we know, is someone who likes drinks, likes finding connection over food. I mean, she was a bartender for forever in Next Generation, and so I like that becomes part of the actual lore of the Elorians and their culture. Sorry, my cat Newt is joining us for the rest of this review. Hi, bud. But I like that they connect that with the ability that Guinan has to, like, sense time and sense space and, like, have a more extra awareness of another sort of feeling and vibe and, like, the sort of extra normal in the world. And so that connection of food and drink to that and how she can, like, pluck a moment. I thought that was such a cool concept. There's connection between all of us, and every moment in time is interconnected. We're all connected together sort of idea. I thought that was very, very Trek. And I like that she tries to summon Q and it doesn't work because something's off. That was very cool. And then when the door opens and this man comes down, I like that Picard's like, is it him? No, not really. And so we're sitting here wondering who this dude is at the bar. Like this very aggressively annoying dude, just constantly talking. I've met people like that at bars. They do exist. Very annoying. And so I like that Guinan's able to read him. And that whole scene I was like, who is this guy? What's going to happen? And I will say I was a little bit let down by the fact that he turned out to be an FBI agent. That it was just simply, oh, he's there to sort of capture Picard. Kind of disappointing because they kind of built up that he was something even more mysterious than Q. Like, they had built that up. And then ultimately doesn't really seem to be anything all that important. Honestly, them getting caught by the FBI feels like yet another sidetrack in this season. Because now is next episode them going to have to get rescued from the FBI. That's where I'm getting annoyed by the plot progression of the season. Less so with the pacing of the story and more the constant need to sidetrack stuff. Because we already had Rios getting captured. Now we're getting Picard getting captured and needing to be rescued. Seems like a little bit of a forced cliffhanger to have a little bit more drama and not really adding much. We'll see where they go with it, so I don't want to judge it too harshly just yet. But it does seem like an added plot beat that we didn't really need, that's just there to add more drama and tension to the moment needlessly without actually developing things. I would have much rathered it be soon involved or something like that. But this just seems like a very needless sidetrack that did not need to be added. But we'll see what they do with the next episode. Not the biggest fan of that development of the storyline, even though I liked the scene with the guy. But we'll see where ultimately they go with it. But with all that being said, that is my review for this episode of Star Trek Picard Monster. What did you think of it? I'd love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments below. My cat Newt would also like to hear all of that down in the comments below. Also, don't forget to check out that video that I did about, it's over here, about Star Trek Mission Chicago, because I just want to share that story because it really meant a lot to me this entire weekend. It was one of the most moving experiences of my life. So please check out that video if you get the chance. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Mwah, you're all lovely, and I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. Yeah, bud. Hi.